Hi there, my name is Isaiah Orlin. I am founder of Higher Frequencies, an entrepreneur, executive, lawyer, physical fitness enthusiast, and a seeker of enlightenment and higher frequencies. Higher Frequencies is a community platform based on the pillars of spiritual enlightenment, wellness, music, and travel. Our mantra, discipline our senses to purify our mind, body, and soul through our spiritual practice, physical fitness routine, nutritional behavior, and relationship with self and others, hopes to provide guidance in our community's quest in reaching higher frequencies and moving closer and closer toward enlightenment, understanding we are all one collective energy. Each episode, we will bring you thought leaders from various sectors of business, nutrition, physical fitness, travel, music, and spirituality to discuss their stories and the modalities of discipline they lean into to reach higher frequencies. Our guest today is Melinda Sheckells, an award-winning editor, writer, and producer with more than 20 years of experience in lifestyle, travel, food, entertainment, celebrity, fashion, design, including managing both digital and print newsrooms, feature writing for national magazines and websites, copywriting and editing, branded content and marketing, copywriting, and strategy. Melinda and I met over 15 years ago and have been friends and colleagues and have shared many adventures ever since. Our topic, the evolution of Las Vegas tourism, community, and culture, the many sides of the people who visit, live, work, play, and heal in Las Vegas. Hey, Melinda.
Hi, how are you?
Great to have you here.
I feel like that was a very long intro for me. I don't know. Like, have I done all those things? I'm always like, gosh, I guess I
don't think
have.
we can talk about everything.
Many decades.
So about 15 years, yes?
And I don't even remember how we met, so that's a good sign.
Okay.
Do you?
Yes.
Okay. How do we meet?
No.
I do not remember how we met.
It culminated with a sneaker expose in Vegas 7, which is where we met when you were with Wendo immediately.
Yeah.
I think possibly when I came to the offices when I first moved to town.
That had to be it.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've known each other. I always say, like, you can always tell you're real friends because you never know at what point they came into your life, because it just feels like they've always been there.
Yeah.
And there's no like time, space. There's nothing. It's just you float.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
There's no indicators.
That's a wonderful thing. And some things were needed to be forgotten. So why don't we start by giving our audience a little overview of your career and how you started in Vegas and the magazine space and the print space and where you're at today.
Sure. Yeah. I came to Vegas 17 years ago. Just celebrated my 17th anniversary in May. And I originally moved here. I was living in Newport Beach. Working on some magazines that were in the architecture and interior design space. They were business publications for home builders and architects, interior designers. And I was looking to make the transition to consumer publishing. The year was 2007. And my mom lived in Vegas, and she was constantly telling me, you got to move to Vegas. There's so many opportunities here. There's no income tax, all of the good things that moms want you to be part of. And then I would be very close to her. So I just started looking for jobs and came up with a job posting from Greenspun Media Group. It was for an editor of a magazine that was essentially what I was doing on the business side, but in the consumer space, called Las Vegas Home and Design. And so it gave me the opportunity to essentially go into people's houses, feature amazing homes around the valley, and adapt some of the language and knowledge that I had learned in the architecture and interior design space, but for a new audience, and took the job, did that, and it just kind of snowballed from there. I mean, it started there, then opportunity came up at Vegas Magazine, which was another one of the titles they owned. Jumped on board there, decided to take on both projects, and then from there, 944 Magazine, from there, Vegas Rated Magazine, and many years with Wendo Media, Life is Beautiful Festival, all of the things that were part of that company's umbrella for over a decade. And then in 2018, Vegas 7, which was the primary title that I was working on, closed at that time. And I then started freelancing. I started freelancing for national publications and had been doing so for a while concurrently with my job. But, I just saw the demand for people to know about Vegas from people that actually live in Vegas is so high. And everybody wants the insider tips. Everybody wants to know where to go. Everybody wants to know the hacks and the secrets and all the things. And people are perpetually fascinated by the topic of Las Vegas. She is always the most important person in the room, as I say. It dominates any conversation when you tell people that you live here, you're from here, or have spent any amount of time here. They are infinitely fascinated by Vegas.
Thank you for that. That was amazing. Did you always have a passion for travel and hospitality, or was that sort of grown with your career in Vegas?
I did always have a passion for travel and hospitality. Funny, I remember my mother loves to tell the story too. It's like on my 10th birthday, I asked for luggage and it had to be matching. I asked for a matching luggage set that was very specific. It was blue, ice blue, hard-sided luggage. And I just had always wanted to. I remember my grandfather used to write paper airline tickets for me out on paper. So because I would pretend that I was going to new destinations, and he made me a little passport. And I don't know where any of this stuff came from. I mean, this was very early on. I just had this unnerving desire to travel, or the idea of travel was so important to me. And then it just grew. It exponentially grew. You know, in college, I studied abroad and lived abroad. And that really kind of sealed the deal. And then, would just always be going, always be traveling, always be going. And with that really came developing a language for what hospitality is, what I would expect as a consumer. And then as I developed my writing career and got deeper into the different lifestyle topics, travel came along naturally with that scope. So
that's awesome. You hit on it, hospitality, which is a word we're going to get to a little later, because I think we've had some discussions as of late on where service has gone and where it needs to go. Yeah. But you also at the beginning of the conversation hit on friendship and, camaraderie, and really, like, even in the alcohol business, we would always say you have to break bread with someone before you do anything with them. Can you give us your feelings on why travel is so important when it comes to bonds, friendships, both from a personal standpoint and a business standpoint? Yeah,
I mean, I think the challenges, like traveling is challenging, and it's always challenging, even when it's easy. It's challenging. Like, you're away from home, you might be, missing a call, you might have to get on a Zoom. I mean, these are normal things that happen to me while I'm traveling. You may get rejected from leaving a country because you don't have enough pages in your passport, which just happened to me literally 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of uncomfortable things that happen while you're traveling. And I think that then there's people that fall in, great memories that are made maybe while some of those uncomfortable things are happening, or people you meet along the way while there's adversities. Then there's great moments that you experience that are tied to beautiful memories in different places or meals or whatnot. And these visions, are imprints in your head in the photo book of your mind, right? Our mind makes these imprints of essentially photographs forever. And so I think that those bonds, the bond with the memory and the bond with the people, becomes very strong. And that's what drives people to continue to explore, is in great pursuit of those moments. You're always in pursuit of those moments. The excitement of landing in a new city that you've never been to, the thrill of exploring and seeing what that city's like, even the excitement that comes from booking the plane ticket, and the kind of adventure that you're saying is, okay, I'm going to check out and everything is just going to have to adapt to the fact I'm not going to be here. There's all those thrilling moments that come along with it before you even leave. A lot of the thrill happens before.
Yeah, I mean, it's the aspect of I think when you travel, especially solo, as you have and I have in a lot of our instances, there's just all of this opportunity for personal growth, because you're in uncomfortable situations. Yeah. And you just have to make the best of it and smile, which sometimes is difficult.
It is. It definitely tests the patience.
So, you just mentioned I know you were just in Africa, and that was where that passport experience happened, but you still choose to make Las Vegas your home. You're obviously, it's different than when we met, where you had your feet in the ground in publications and had to be on the ground here. You don't really need to. You can be more global if you chose to. Why do you choose to still make Vegas your home as a local?
Well, there's a certain number of factors that go into that. A lot of people in the travel community, a lot of my peers in the travel community have chosen to live in places like New York and Los Angeles. And this does not make sense to me because the cost of living there, even now that the cost of living has accelerated in Vegas, the cost of living to live in those places, if you're not actually going to be there, is extremely high. And most of those people are, a lot of them in my industry, people are single, they have to have the freedom to kind of move around. And so to me, I've never understood. It's like, why do you live in LA and New York when essentially you're gone? I mean, some of these people, some of my peers are gone.
And you're an LA native.
Right. Some of my peers are gone more than half of their time and they're paying exorbitant amounts of rent to live in these places. And so that never didn't make any sense to me because I was like, certainly, and listen, the LA that I grew up in and the LA now are not the same place. They're not at all.
No, I just moved back from LA and it's not even what it was when I moved there 6 years ago.
They're virtually unrecognized. It's not the same place.
Yeah.
No, so other than the memories that I have growing up there, there's not really that much for me there in LA. So, and also too, just the ease, the convenience. Like I can get to, it's a $20 Uber ride at the airport.
Right.
It's easy to get home. I can park at the airport. Like, the airport is really manageable, and that's a big and important thing to me. Now, granted, sometimes the amount of flights, we do have a good amount of flights. And
to connect a few places, but to not have to go through LAX is fantastic.
Well, we do. Yeah, we do. And if you do need to go to LAX and fly direct, you can do that option. I mean, I've done that so many times. Just take a Southwest flight and get on an Emirates flight and go to Dubai. Like literally, like it's easy, right? So all of those things matter to me. And then, of course, obviously, we live in a very advantageous place for people to be sole proprietors or have LLCs and be independent contractors.
Correct.
So because of, the way our tax structure is set up. So it's great all the way around.
Amazing. So I'm going to bifurcate our conversation and we're going to get,
word.
The law degree, right? It still pops up every once in a while. I'm told my emails are a little too legalese these days on the business side, but what are you going to do? I want to first talk about the evolution of the integrated, I don't want to call it resort experience in Las Vegas, but the travel experience, because there's so much here. And then I want to dive back into the aspects of what it's like to be in a local in Las Vegas, because from when I lived here in 08 to 15 and now moving back, that's also drastically changed because of the sports teams, because of the development of the communities externally off the strip. So, but first and foremost, we always have to remember that our audience might not understand some of the jargon we talk about. So let's dive into the difference of our consumers here first, the free independent traveler and the business traveler, and get into how they've changed since COVID, because obviously COVID really shook things up. So first and foremost, how do you view those consumers differently in your mind?
Right. So I would say the business traveler is primarily someone who comes during the week, obviously, who, will be here on an expense account, who is here for a specific conference. And that happens, really seasonally. It happens kind of October through essentially April. They might come every year. They usually have, their experience planned for them pretty closely by meeting planners. And a lot of that business is kind of siphoned into, the meetings and convention sector of the resort, essentially. So they're part of a group and they don't make a lot of independent choices, usually on their own, unless they have some extra free time that they tag on or need to entertain clients or things like that. But they're usually really open. They're probably the ones that use like the direction the most of like the hotel services, right? And through what they get through their meetings and conventions planners, essentially. So that's the business traveler. And then the leisure traveler is really, might be people that are looking for deals that come through third party, booking agencies. They might be a lot of people coming in from California and driving in. There might be people coming for major milestone events like bachelorette parties or girls' weekends or to celebrate birthdays and things like that. And, they're going to really have more of the discretionary income to spend. They're looking to, either come in maybe for a concert or a residency. That's a big thing. You may be coming in for a sports event, or they're coming in to check out something new. So, those are really interesting, two very interesting groups that kind of dominate the landscape of the city at any given time. Now, we need both because the hotels can't sit empty on the weekdays.
40% when I was at LVS, Venetian and Palazzo, 40% of the room product Monday through Thursday had to be filled with trade show and convention, just to make the lease payments on the land.
Yeah, exactly. So they have to have a very symbiotic relationship, and when those two things get out of whack, like essentially they do when times of recession or when times are difficult financially, when they get out of whack is when things get weird.
That's a good lead into the next question, right? Because of what I just stated about filling the room product, and also because, let's face facts, margins on trade shows and convention on the catering and conference they drive business. Yeah. Has it rebounded since COVID? Are people wanting to bring their companies back, their trade shows back? How's that going these days?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely back in full swing. I think we saw a lot of like revenge spending. I mean, we saw Vegas was the biggest benefactor of revenge spending after COVID. We were in all actuality only closed about 5 weeks, I think it was. We started to absorb a lot of the business. When entertainment finally came back, which was about a year later, as I remember, then it really put things back into full swing. And we saw this major inflation of prices, major inflation of concert ticket prices, the advent of obviously Raider Stadium being a huge new 70,000 seat venue that came into the market that's pulling tickets. The interesting thing about the football is that it pulls on a Sunday, which creates actually a great bridge business between
crossover day on Monday when trade show and FIT are generally your soft night is Sunday. So
which is occupancies would dip down to under 50%, 30%, whatever they are on Sunday nights. And now during that, whatever that 16-week period of time is, we see a much different type of clientele. And then also too, the programming around that and the programming geared towards different markets. We saw Vegas really kind of stretch its marketing muscle and get in deep with whatever teams are coming and do a lot of target marketing out of market.
Oh, wow.
So that was interesting.
I didn't even think of that because, we have the drive markets of Arizona and California, and we have these other feeder markets, but I didn't think of if they're playing a certain team that they go after that clientele as well.
100%. And the marketing efforts of the resorts in those cities. And also too, where it became very symbiotic as well as also too as places like BetMGM, or you saw some of the satellites, even Circa Sports started opening in other states. It became an even bigger attraction point because they had the built-in marketing value of you can bet with us all the time.
Yep.
Even if you're not in Vegas, so you can have Vegas in your living room. And then when your team does come to Vegas, then the incentives come for that.
In 2010, I was working on a deal with Cantor for them to take over the sports book at Venetian Palazzo. And the thought process was, you're going to have like a hedge fund manager to put your sports books in 2010. And now you don't need that. You can just call the bet in, or you can go make the bet yourself if you want.
Yeah, it's really
wild.
It's really wild. And then when I remember when the law changed, there was a lot of debate about whether it was going to destroy our sports betting business, and it in fact has only amplified it. And it has only made more people want a sports bet.
1,000%.
And to the point now where something that was considered basically taboo and illegal, now we have major celebrities endorsing it everywhere.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, we see the commercials, right? It's wild. There's two things I picked up. Last week I had Robert Rippey on and we discussed AI, and we also discussed the aspect of AI not replacing the creator, but also the service aspect of the business here. And you spoke about inflation and prices going up. And you spoke about conventioners really having handlers, meaning, the people who are directing to restaurants, and also the leisure traveler, and then also the people in the restaurant. But I hear from myself and others, it seems there is a bit of a service lag these days in terms of what expectations are and what's being delivered at the resorts.
It's interesting. And I asked Daniel Boulud this question, famous chef, and, obviously has been in the service industry for many years, used to have restaurants in Las Vegas. One of your former colleagues is the president of his company, Sebastian
great guy.
Silvestri. And so I had the opportunity to interview Danielle 2 years ago at South Beach Food and Wine. And I asked him that. I said, what is this? What does COVID represent for us in terms of a service opportunity? Because we saw a lot of people leave the kitchen. We saw a lot of people leave the restaurant industry that were career people 20 years in.
Yep.
Don't want to do it anymore. Left during COVID, ended their careers. We have to rebuild that. That just doesn't come back. you can't rebuild that equity that fast. So what we're seeing now is, I think we saw people that came back to the restaurants that really wanted to be in the business. Then we saw an extreme escalation of, obviously massive amounts of business, which was great. And then that kind of also in turn weeded out the people that didn't really want to work for it because it wasn't just easy money. The restaurant business is not easy. So we're definitely in a rebuilding phase with what the hospitality caliber is going to look like in this city.
That's fair.
I think that it will take a decade.
Wow.
I think at least from what I hear from having to retrain kitchen talent, to find kitchen talent.
Front of house staff.
Front of house staff.
My goodness. Yeah.
For people to look at it as a serious career again, is really going to take
You also don't have the personalities running the ships anymore, right? So like when I got to LVS, it was known that, Sheldon Adelson, no was not a word we were allowed to use. If you're an executive, just no is not a word you're allowed to use with a consumer, with a guest, not a consumer, right? If I was an executive, a lawyer, and I still wore my name tag on the floor, and if someone had a question, how can I help you? How can I find that out?
Yeah.
With Win, it was the guest is always right, make them happy, comp them if they need to be comped, right? That element's left with the corporations a bit.
Yeah. And it's been tougher, definitely, as you've seen. I think 2 large corporations dominate the strip primarily.
Correct.
Being Caesars and MGM. There's a certain amount of it, I always call it value engineering, that they're able to do on everything. And that could be value engineering on, a meal or service or, whatever it may be, because they have the wagering power.
Correct.
In order to get what they want at a certain price, right? And so with that comes a little bit of the dissolution. No, that's not the right word. Maybe it's dissolution. Just a little bit of the dilution. That was it. A little bit of the dilution of the potency, essentially, if that makes sense.
That's fair. I mean, that's fair. I mean, and you have to be realistic. As you said, there's in all of the workforce, especially hands-on workforce these days, people got accustomed to a different lifestyle during COVID. And it's not a negative thing, right? Because people also started questioning, I believe, well, what is life really about? Am I supposed to be in this situation? But we all have to make money and put food on the table.
Yeah.
And if you choose a job, do it to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
So let's get into the food and beverage now and the culture on and off the strip. So as you said, you spoke about Baloo in the 90s, really starting with Wolfgang, with Spago. We had the celebrity, chef craze. Then we had the vibe dining, the Tao groups of the world, right? Where you go in and it's a scene. But now, I was at Esther's, which is a fantastic restaurant in downtown LA, and I was with a CMO of another company. And next to us was a couple staying at Caesars, and they heard our conversation and asked, "Oh, can we ask you for recommendations?" So I said, "Where are you staying?" They said, "Caesars." I said, "Oh, Luger's just opened there. It's phenomenal." And they said, No, we don't want to eat at any restaurants in any of the casinos."
Wild.
It's wild, right?
Yeah,
and there's still amazing restaurants in the casinos, right? But what do you attribute the whole off the strip boom of culinary to these days?
It's easy. It's 2 words: social media. I mean, actually, it's two words, and the third: social media and Uber. I mean, it changed everything.
Gotcha.
Uber. I remember the day Uber launched in Las Vegas. It changed everything. You didn't have to get in a cab anymore. You could just call. You could end up anywhere. You could go
a third of the price.
The cab, the whole thing, Vegas not really having accessible public transportation. When Uber came, it literally changed the game because it gave people the ability to explore at a different level and be more attuned to leaving the casino as a result. Also, too, coupled social media. The 2 things happened relatively at the same time, Instagram and Uber, if I remember, about 2012. And it just has persuaded people, especially in the food world. Instagram is such a mechanism for food. And people see that and they don't want to just discover what's in front of them, where before it used to be everything was booked when you got to your room.
Correct.
That was the old school Vegas philosophy. That was the reason why they had the magazines like LVM in the rooms. People made their decisions when they got to Vegas. Now they may make their decisions when they get to Vegas, but they make their decisions on their phone, and they don't want to do what's in front of them. They actually want to find something. There's a power of discovery there that they want to feel.
It's like a scavenger hunt.
They want to feel like they discovered something and can tell then their friends back home that they did something in Vegas that no one else has discovered.
I might also think it's about, and the one thing about working in Vegas is community, even the way we met, right? And even with and without social media, there's so many amazing chefs here that have trained under, the Robuchons, and have trained under Baloo and Puck and this one and that one. And I see them opening a lot of restaurants off strip because it's just more economical for them and they have more control. Do you think that's a major factor as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in order to make the margins that you have to make on the strip, you have to be Gordon Ramsay. You have to have a name like Gordon Ramsay. I mean, you get a $25 million restaurant, the build out alone, right?
It's wild.
So those things are insane.
You got to fill them too.
Huge amounts of numbers you have to make that don't allow the little guy to open restaurants on the strip. And that's the reason. And then also too, I think that there's also, a little bit more of a cred to have trained under these great people on the strip and then flip off and go off the strip. But it's still very challenging. I mean, you know this from your business and your law degrees. In order for local restaurants to work, you really have to have as I call them, sympathetic landlords. You have to have landlords that really want that business there to add something to the community versus just be a rent payment.
Or community redevelopment, such as downtown.
Correct.
Or Summerlin, or which downtown's different because downtown are city blocks, but then in Summerlin and Henderson, you have a lot of the new version of a strip mall where it's like a Whole Foods and restaurants and it's great for the communities out there, I think.
And those, typically landlords have wanted the check from the big box or the chain.
But that's also not available anymore.
And that's the thing.
Retail's dead.
Yep. And that's the thing is that it's caused a very interesting shift. I would like to see, I wish that local people would support local restaurants more, especially in communities like Henderson. It was very challenging. I watched my boyfriend open a restaurant in Henderson 2 years ago, and the local community just didn't support it. They would come, they would bring their own wine. Like it was like all of the things that we noticed about what the consumer habits were.
Oh, wow.
Were so interesting. And I was like, this is why we don't have nice things.
And look, for corking fees on wine are interesting, but for our audience, restaurants make about 33% on their food and about 65 to 70% on their alcohol. So when you bring a bottle of wine in, it's nice. You want to have an expensive bottle of wine and the markup's high sometimes, but it's really nice to support the restaurant and what their inventory is as well.
And that's one of the things is that all those things go into. So we were really surprised. And I watched him go through that whole process of what it looked like, what scale looked like. One of the reasons why Esther's, in my opinion, has been so successful, you got to remember Esther started with like 30 seats. And that was at great scale,
Yes.
30 to 50 seats in a local restaurant downtown in a neighborhood that was just developing that at that time had free parking was so key.
I mean, it's like, look, I was in the sneaker culture back, as you remember, right? That whole idea of limited edition and scarcity to start a brand, always, whether it's now Supreme, right? Because there's nothing limited about Supreme anymore, right?
Right.
But but that's how it started and that's how it's framed in people's minds. I'm rooting for Esther's to keep, they seem to be busy. I'm rooting for them. This new space is gorgeous.
They just, for everyone that's listening that doesn't know, they just expanded to a space that's 3 times their original. And so it's very interesting to see them. So they had, they built up such demand, they needed the larger space. And it's literally right next door, so it's great. Although parking is not free anymore.
No, and I go to the Oyster lot and I walk from Turnberry, actually, which people are always like, you walk? I'm like, yeah, I did grow up in New York. But parking is rather expensive down there right now for what it is. One more thing before we move on to gaming and sports and things. The ethnic cultures, the expats here in town. When I got to town originally, I realized that Las Vegas, the Asian food scene, I mean, rivals San Francisco in this country, right? Yeah. Do you see other ethnicities in this town that you really see the local culture and their food scene exploding as well?
What's interesting is I think that the Asian food scene is still really vibrant. I think we saw a moment when Thai food was obviously led by Lotus of Siam, which was the major James Beard Award winning Thai restaurant here in Las Vegas that gained so much popularity and notoriety when they won their Beard Award. And then we saw a few other Thai restaurants come that also got a lot of notoriety. Then we saw it shift into Vietnamese restaurants, which You were one of the first people to take me to District 1.
My favorite.
And in its heyday, and now it's having a resurgence, which is very cool. I was going to actually say we got to go. That's what I was going to tell you.
Oh, yeah. I saw Christina's back there.
We have
Amazing.
to go to District 1 for dinner. And definitely a place you want to check out if you're in town. But then I also think it was really interesting. I started to notice there's been a big Chinese food boom again.
Yep.
And so Shanghai Taste, great spot.
Starting with China Mama originally.
China Mama now has a
delivery too.
And they now have a new restaurant that they just opened. I think that there is a lot of noodle shops have opened. So really interesting that it's now transitioned to Chinese food as well. You know, Greek food has become very popular in the city.
That's all over the country now. Yeah.
Massively popular. Mediterranean food.
Yeah, Mediterranean.
Everything is Mediterranean
dips on
food.
dips.
Everything is Mediterranean food.
Oh, geez. Well, thank you that. And I hope that helps some of the guests when they come to town to think about some of the food they can try. Gaming. So once again, I look back on my career, and originally we had an 82 rule, right? 8% of our revenue came from 2% of our clientele, which was a list of 5,000 gamers.
Yeah.
Wild for a hotel that's 20 million people a year, right? It seems there's a little less emphasis, and I know gaming still drives the town. Do you think there's a little less emphasis with all the sports and entertainment exposure now we have?
Well, it's all, like I said, it's shifted. You know, I think sports betting now, capturing people and how they want a game before they even get here has become the focus.
Gotcha.
You know, and we've been able to do that through technology and through regulation. And those things have made a major impact. So we have implanted in people's minds the fantasy of gaming prior to them ever getting here now. So there is a little bit of that going on. Then it translates, we teach them how to game with these games that are they're more, what is it called? Perceived
chance versus luck.
Right. So
game
we
of chance
teach,
versus game
we
versus
teach
luck.
with and Play Studios. Andrew Pascal's company has done, you know, many people play that. You don't actually win any money. You just play the game and then you win rewards. So it drives people here, and they were a real leader in that. So you're not actually, there's no exchange of money going on, but you're getting into the vibe.
They're
We're training them.
The dopamine hits.
We train them.
Yeah.
We train them.
The dopamine hits.
So that's been, you know, very interesting. Is the capturing as many people before they even get here has become a big focus.
Yeah, that's great. And look, Baccarat still runs the city at the end of the day in January during Chinese New Year. We all know that gaming's not going away. E-gaming, I remember in 2010, I had this wild idea and I said, we should turn part of the poker room into an e-gaming room. Because in Miami where I lived, I saw a lot of athletes who play craps go home and play esports after, right? And then I brought Virgin Gaming and EA Sports and Sony PlayStation to do the first EA Sports Challenge on the Strip, which legally was not a fun deal to work on. But it seems like e-gaming has still not found its place. Do you feel that way?
You know, it's interesting. It has been, they have the esports arena at Luxor, and I think that it is attracted, it has become, I don't want to call it a subculture, but kind of it is still has remained a subculture. I think that there is a perceived and maybe real stigma attached to it that it does require a bit of skill.
And I would think
skill.
I think
and
also the time. I think getting the e-gamers away from the screen to spend in restaurants and the poker player is going to go to the blackjack table or the craps table. Yeah. The e-gamers, I thought they would, but I don't know if they will. No. Yeah, because it's chance, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, gaming is gaming. All right, sports and entertainment because it's totally different, right?
Yeah.
I think let's talk about first sports and then the change of the resident shows, right? So sports first, starting with the Vegas Knights, right? That really changed the dynamic here, yes?
Totally. Vegas Golden Knights was a huge thing for us because we never thought we were going to have sports teams because of the betting regulations. And once those changed, it just changed the game because it allowed us to not only cultivate, you have to really think about what sports does at the community level too, at the youth level. So there's that's a big thing for
all the kids playing hockey out here. It was the wild, I don't have kids, but every time I talk to my friends with kids, they're like, oh, I'm going to hockey practice. I'm like, why?
changes the game.
It changes
the game for the kids.
Right.
It changes the game. And listen, hockey is a great sport for Vegas because it's indoors.
It's a great sport for anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great, and it was also and then I realized it was the first team here. So that's why the kids really took to it.
And Canadian people are so nice, as we know. So hockey really changed the game. We all had to buy into the team in order to get them. I mean, I bought the season tickets too. We all pitched in money to get the tickets, to get the team. And then of course we had, major tragedy happen right when they launched. So that was awful, the 1 October shooting. And then that built a lot of like camaraderie and, community around the team as a result. And then obviously, winning the Stanley Cup so quickly was a really big, going to the playoffs, several very close playoff runs, and then winning the Stanley Cup. And we, Vegas was like, wow, now we're really on the map for this. And then the Raiders coming, was a huge thing. Just getting that franchise, getting the stadium built.
And that energy from winning the cup really tipped the scale for the Raiders, right. And now the Oakland Athletics, and there's talks of soccer teams and basketball teams, and it being the sports capital of the world now.
Yeah, and Derek Stevens,
Formula One.
Derek Stevens, who owns Circa, who we've spoken about a little bit earlier, Circa's initiatives with sports and their sports betting, and Derek is a visionary in that respect in downtown casinos. He was 100% right about this. Derek was one of the visionaries of what the Knights would bring to the city, was integral in getting the team, and has built an entire casino around, an all-adults casino around, Circa Sports, the largest sports book in the world.
All you got to do is go to the pool and you know what's going on.
Where you can watch, you can literally from your room watch
every
100 games on
it's wild
in the tower, which is insane, and you have to see it to believe it, but it's a marvel.
I mean, I'm not the biggest sports person in the world, but like for anyone who is, I don't think you can have that set up in any quote unquote man cave in the world, what they got down there.
No, you can. And people just want to come see it.
Yeah.
And he created something that was such a spectacle, and he just was not wrong.
No.
He was 100% right.
That pool is packed every...
100%.
Yeah, every time this game's on.
He told me a story when I interviewed him last year for exactly what this topic that we're talking about right now, for an article about it. He told me that he presented the idea to a lot of the major financial, investors in New York, and to get money, venture capitals and whatnot, and they laughed at him. They laughed him out the door.
Yeah, the thing about Vegas, and that doesn't shock me. The thing about Vegas, just like you always need the human capital in the resorts, unless you work in the resorts, you really don't know what's going on.
No.
You have no idea unless you've lived and breathed those halls, those cities, and like really understand the interplay between the human capital, the guest experience, the wayfind, all these things that are so unique. They just don't exist anywhere else.
Yeah, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Not even in the cruise ship world, although people always try to compare us to cruise ships.
No. So the resident shows, right? I know you've interviewed a lot of these people, and our friend Jason Gassworth has been instrumental in some of this stuff as well. How has that landscape changed, not only for the consumer, but also for the artist, being able, just like with the Dead, to set up 30 dates here and not have to travel anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great for the artists because they make more money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when it comes down to it, if you're not having to lug 16, trucks across the country, you're not having to set up, tear down, and you make your audience come to you, you get bigger returns profit-wise. And then you're also getting, remember, the casino or the promoter are both in tandem are underwriting a big amount of the expense for you.
Correct.
So it's a bigger paycheck for the artist. And, as a result, a lot of that has been offset to the customer. So we've seen a really high escalation in prices and tickets.
Yeah.
And really we saw that most with Adele, because I was literally shocked, almost passed out when I saw what the prices were on Adele tickets. They were very
face
high.
Value, not resale.
Well, it was a mystery as to what the face value really is, because then they instituted dynamic pricing,
which is criminal in its own right.
Dynamic pricing could be its own podcast.
It's the official platinum. All these little terms they use to be legalized scalpers is criminal on top of the fees, and we'll see what happens with the case that's going to be brought against by the DOJ and. Ticketmaster and all that other stuff.
It removed a lot of the transparency because face value was always a term. People would look, what is the face value?
But
of the
now they
ticket?
have the official platinum, which is really just dynamic
Right.
pricing based on scarcity, and then the fees on top of it as well. It's just not right for the consumer. But that's another story for another day.
It is a totally another story.
But I think this is going to segue to the next part of our conversation, not the dynamic pricing, but so sports and residency shows, right? So Vegas in her glory as she turns into what she turns into and grows up every few years. Originally, you just needed hotel operating workers, right? You needed casino hosts, then you needed nightlife hosts. But now you need all the ancillary support that comes with resident shows, sporting events, dynamic off strip, the restaurant business, right? So I think that has a lot to do with the change in the communities, right? So maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we saw essentially a new Hollywood kind of pop up here, right?
Right.
And I did this very story for the Hollywood Reporter, which is one of my outlets last year, about how Vegas is becoming essentially the new Hollywood.
Correct.
And a big part of that obviously came with the Sphere. We had this incredible technology, entertainment convergence here that was only here. We had, content has to be created for it. It is completely unique, and it has to be powered. It has to have acts power it. It has to have technology power it. And then all of the ancillary, professions that go with that. And then that's multiplied throughout, like the stadium. You think about the stadium too. I mean, the stadium team all came from Oakland. I mean, they weren't Vegas people. They came, so they imported. So all of these creatives, technology, invention,
the team has a support staff. They have trainers. They have people who work in the locker room.
Everyone has been imported now.
Everyone's
to the
imported.
City.
There's centers of business here. There's big centers of business.
Whereas it's changed, and it changes now the dynamic of the local community.
Well, it also brings with, when you have a new set of workers come, you also then need the support, right? Legal, financial, just like running a business. You need all of those other communities. So you saw the proliferation. I think, Summerlin and Henderson for the last 15, 20 years have really, it's more little tiny houses areas out there. Like, it's great. I mean, it's great. And downtown Las Vegas now is coming together. How do you see the communities changing over the next few years?
It's a very interesting question. I don't know. Vegas wasn't a city that was built with a lot of foresight. And so, I mean,
to say the least,
the story goes, Bugsy just kind of they put up that hotel just on the strip.
I heard originally,
and then it kind of went
before even like I don't want to use the term mafia, but before they came, there was also something to do with marriage licenses and divorce out here, and that's really what Nevada was about originally, Las Vegas.
Yeah, the marriage licenses. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, marriage is obviously one of the big institutions, one of Vegas's cottage industries is marriage, and it has been for a million years. Vegas wasn't, we kind of built as we went, right?
1,000%.
There's no like 20-year plan, 40-year plan. Someone finally put one together, which was great. But it's very challenging sometimes for us to think ahead.
Correct.
And now we're in a position where we are somewhat forced to do that, because now we actually have, people are staying. Like, people are not just coming here, leaving.
People are staying, and there's also population density in areas where certain areas, two things. One, certain areas can't grow much further. People are coming from different cities and looking for different things. And proximity to the strip where a lot of the businesses that they have to work in.
And what that signals, unfortunately, is what I think city planners and economists know best, is that's going to signal affordable housing crisis. Because as you see, the majority of Vegas was built for single family homes.
Correct.
We will soon reach a density where you can't just have single family homes. And that drives us into a bit of an issue, as other cities have faced. So
I think that might be the opportunity in downtown.
Yeah.
To go high, right? And really, if we look at cities like Austin, or even what Dan Gilbert did with Quicken Loans and Bedrock in Detroit, right? Where they took the Quicken Loans team and basically said, we're going to rebuild Detroit. We're going to put people here. And then his buddies are going to build all the ancillary businesses around it, right? Which originally, when downtown was being redeveloped, was more about arts and food and beverage. Do you see it being one of those cities eventually?
It's interesting. I think we had a stake, and you and I spoke about this the other night. We had a stake where we had a visionary entrepreneur, Tony Hsieh, come in and do things and look at chapters I know for a fact that he looked at what Dan Gilbert did in downtown Detroit and based it off of these different types of communities that had done that, but then put his own kind of utopian spin on it. Now, I think that was one blueprint that was much more based in theory rather than practice. I think that we will see the next phase of development be very much based in things that are going to work. And I don't think we're going to see as much throwing everything against the wall as we have in the past. I think we've graduated from that. And I think the next phase of development will be definitely to serve very much a purpose of where are we going to put all these people?
Yeah. And also, we also have some great talent on the food and beverage side and on the sports center coming out of UNLV, right? And really finding how we keep that talent in town as well.
Oh, yes. And sorry, going back to the food, I diverged to the bigger picture, but yes, going back to the food, obviously we know where there's a great institution, you develop great things. So the medical school, that's the reason why we've been trying to build medical talent here. Correct. Is because our medical system has been so distressed.
Correct.
We know that because of that hospitality school and because of the talent that they punch out there, we in theory, and we have the lab here, it works. So, and I think other industries are starting to follow suit as we've now reinvested in the law school, the medical school, we're building in those categories. Now we just need to build teachers because we're in an education crisis.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation with a friend and her child's been going to private school and something happened where and she's not interested in putting the child in public school.
Yeah.
I went to New York City public school. I'm a product of New York City public school. And I understand that we have a public school crisis nationally, but for a city like this that's financially well off, I think it's something that we have to really think about. It shouldn't be that you have to spend oodles of money and send your child to private school here. There should be a good public school system.
Well, that was the thing is the way this city was set up on those very people we were talking about earlier was everybody kind of took care of what they were supposed to take care of. And that's changed now because we're a corporate town. So because we don't pay taxes, there's a big deficit in where the money's supposed to come from.
Correct.
And where it might be coming from in reality now. And I think unfortunately for us, because we enjoy not paying taxes, income tax, there might have to be some sort of reconciliation somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's a good point, just so our audience understands. In most states, it'll come from state taxes. State lottery is really where a lot of education funds come through. And because we have casinos here, there is a hard block on us having a state lottery because it takes money out of the casino's pockets.
And that's essentially what the cannabis industry was supposed to do, right?
Yeah, the cannabis industry, though, and I was in the cannabis industry, it's made so many missteps nationally, federally, but also within the states that, due to 280E, and we'll have an episode on this and psychedelics, due to 280E and the banking regulations, it's very hard to make money. So I wouldn't suspect that anytime soon is going to assist in the education problem here.
Yeah, I think that was kind of looked at as the great hope. Yeah. And then obviously we know that is not throwing everything against the wall. As I said before, it didn't pan out. So I'm interested to see what that reconciliation is as we grow, because there has to be something, because the city has changed from what we were built on.
Yeah, and to the point, it's not there. This used to be a city where there was an extreme disparity in wealth, right? You had the people running casinos and making a ton of money, and the hosts, and they could send their kids to private school, right? And then you had the staff of the hotels, right? Which really wasn't a thought. They were just really happy the expats to be here and things like this. And that's not right or wrong. That was just the reality of the situation. What Vegas does great within the casinos is catering to every socioeconomic level. So it should also do that great with its communities. And I think that's the issue with education right now.
Yeah, I do too. That's actually very well put.
Yeah.
And we can't lose sight of that. And when you said is we're known for catering to every socioeconomic level, and recently we have definitely seen that has changed because of inflation and because of the escalating prices on the strip. So
my goodness,
that's a whole nother topic too.
Well, look, if people are going to pay it, people are going to pay it. Yeah. But then you have casinos is one point of it. But then I'll go into restaurants and on a Friday, Saturday night, they're at 60% occupancy. Yeah. So are people really paying it?
Right.
I don't know. Maybe that's something people have to look at, right?
It's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I think when you get up into $120 for a steak, I saw somewhere the other day over $100 for a platter of tacos. I'm like, listen, they're
It's wild.
tacos. You can't.
Yeah.
There's only so much.
You can go to El Tacos Gordo. You know what I mean?
Guys,
They're just as good.
Settle down.
Meat.
Like literally, I kind of feel like, okay, we got to settle down.
And there also was a moment there, look, being a food and beverage person where they were skimping on the quality they were ordering in as well. And it was apparent to people who worked in the industry. So not only were the prices going up, and that's not the case now. I am full supporter of eating out and going to the restaurants and supporting the staff here. It's so important because these are frontline employees who are putting food on their table. And that's really what I think about when I go out. It's not so much this conglomerate making money. It's about the wait staff. So personal travels. We have about, we got like 10 minutes left. Let's talk about you just got back from Africa.
South Africa, yes.
My goodness. And that's where you almost got detained.
Yeah. They have very strict passport regulations. And who knew, world traveler, funny, the lady at the U.S. Embassy said this to me, well, you filled your passport. You're such an amazing world traveler. And I was like, yeah, but I didn't know I could fill the passport. Like you actually can fill your passport. And when it is full, it is no longer valid. So no one tells you that, by the way. No one ever told me that.
No.
So,
and then the hustle's on when they got you there.
So, and certain countries have regulations on how many empty passport pages you have to enter the country. And one of those countries that has the strictest regulations is South Africa. So I was in transit from Botswana to South Africa, and you have to have at least 2 empty open consecutive passport pages. So when I was trying to leave Botswana, they rejected me leaving, and I had to go to the U.S. Embassy and get an emergency passport.
My goodness, like a Tom Clancy novel.
Whoever thought?
My goodness.
And then at that point, I'm on an emergency passport now, but I'm like, wow. I didn't know. I knew about the 6-month thing. Like you can't really travel if your passport has less than 6 months on it left. You got to go get a new one. But who knew about the pages?
But that brings us back to the beginning of the conversation because, it's a funny story, but it also goes to show about how resilient someone can be, right? Yeah. You're in a country halfway across the world, multiple language, not one language, multiple languages are speaking, but you just stood up and you did what you needed to do to figure it out.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was, it was sad to miss the day of the trip that I really wanted to be doing other things other than going to our beautiful U.S. Embassy in Botswana. But, I got to see another city in Botswana as a result. And I made it to my destination with a great story about why my passport is purple now and not blue. So they give you the scarlet letter passport, which is actually the purple passport.
Oh, it's all good.
And they go, did you lose your passport? Everywhere. And I go, no. But I'll tell you the story. So, it's a great story, alas. But yes, I was just in South Africa and Botswana. It was an amazing trip. Highly recommend it. Incredible value.
What was your favorite country you visited in the last 24 months, you think?
Oh my gosh.
I know it's a rough question, right?
It's a really tough one.
All right, you don't have to answer it.
I love Chile. Chile was great.
I love South America. Like my siblings always go to Europe, and I go to Colombia and Peru.
The Atacama Desert, if you've never been there, it's the driest place on earth. It is amazing. And the things you see there, it's really where they film, like Mandalorian, where they film the scenes of that look like, Mars, because it does look like that. It's a salt desert and it is phenomenal. And just seeing the flamingos, so you're in the Tropic of Cancer and where the sun becomes completely level as it sets with the equator line, it's a phenomenal experience.
That's beautiful.
It is like nothing else I've ever seen. That was
the
beautiful.
pink dolphins on the Rio Napa and the Amazon River in Peru, which I got to see. Wild stuff. Okay, one last question. What would you say to a person who's considering moving to Las Vegas and calling it home?
Vegas is not for everybody.
All right.
The reason why, listen, I don't have vices. I'm good in the vice category.
We've all been down certain roads in our life.
Vegas can, you got to be the right mindset. You got to be the right mindset. Vegas people that function best in Vegas don't have a lot of the vices. And I think that you really have to either have them in check or be willing to check yourself or know the type of life you want to lead here and what you're doing here.
Or put them in a cage for certain
weekends. Put them in a cage. lock them up and let them out once a year. I don't know, but you know, that's my best advice to people: is you got to be, you know, make sure you got your personalities in check.
Yeah, I had to leave and come back. I'm joking.
It happens, right?
But so thank you for being a guest. I wanted to thank you for being a guest. Travel, it's as it relates to higher frequencies, it's so important. It allows you to become who you are. It allows you to grow spiritually, emotionally, and physical in ways you can't being stationary. It's also a privilege that we forget. Not everyone has the ability. When I was living in California, a lot of people said, "Oh, I've never left the state," and I thought that was like just a wild thing. So for those of us that get to travel, it's such a privilege. Lean into it. And come to Vegas, because as you heard from this conversation, there is so much more than gaming. We've seen both the Dead shows and Fish shows at the Sphere, and I've been to hundreds of concerts, and I can honestly say the Sphere has possibly ruined me from going to other shows at this point.
It's just a whole new way to look at it.
It's a whole new way of looking at it. Look, live music's great, but this is a whole new sensory experience. So on that, we hope to see you in Vegas sometime. We'll give you some restaurant recommendations and some show recommendations. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.